Wondering what the difference is between a network security engineer and a security conscious network engineer? In this episode, we will discuss the increasing demand for network engineers to know security and whether the role of network engineer and network security engineer will become one of the same. So if you're interested, keep listening.
Do you want a career in cybersecurity? Are you unsure how to start? Curious what it means to be a cybersecurity professional? This is the Cyber Job Hacks Podcast with Dr. Jeff Colburn. He's a 30-year industry professional and the founder of Team Caveo, a company that specializes in helping people launch cyber careers. Join us on this podcast as we explore what it means to be a cybersecurity professional and how to get started. Welcome to the show.
Are you curious if a cyber career is right for you? Do you want to get into cyber and don't know where to start? Are you working in IT and looking to grow? Well, schedule a one-on-one cyber career coaching session with me to discuss where you are currently and how you can best move forward. Go to coaching.cyberjobhacks.com or click the link in the show notes to schedule your session today. Welcome to the Cyber Job Hacks Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jeff Colburn. In the past, most network engineers were expected to know about security was how to harden their network devices and maybe some firewall knowledge. And that was mostly, how to route through the firewall. There was very little about security and networking certifications. Everything focused on routing and switching. But when it came to network design, network engineers would design a network, and then the network security engineers would come in later and bolt on security. These were usually two separate groups, and they usually didn't communicate well with each other. And most network engineers viewed the security team kind of like as wet blankets, right? They usually got in their way, or they broke the design, or the security team wouldn't let the network engineers build the network the way they wanted to. They put on certain security constraints. So really, these weren't normally two groups that worked well together. But I can even remember, as a network engineer, just the battles I had with the security team, right? Just, ideas like implementing VLANs and VRFs, right? Back then, security team didn't understand or didn't want anything to do with virtual separation, right? They wanted physical separation. And so it was just like, just getting, even though they were virtually separate, they didn't want anything to do with it. But today, it's no longer the case, right? You still have these two groups, but it's not as divided as it used to be. Because when it comes to designing networks, you have to design with security in mind, right? And network security, they need to communicate and work together, because it's no longer can you bolt on security. No longer is it just that perimeter security and networking teams doing their thing, the security teams doing their thing. No, there's cooperation that's required now. And increasingly, network engineers are expected to know network security. And, and again, this is beyond that perimeter firewall. You got to start understanding things like networks access control, right? Micro-segmentation, SASE services, right? Anything that's going to be integrated into your network design, people are looking to you to know this, right? And you're even seeing this in like entry-level certifications. Like if you take, for example, Cisco's CCNA exam, 15% of that now is dedicated to security, right? When I took this CCNA back in 1999, it was just routing and some switching, right? It was mostly routing. Now that's not the case. Now you got 15% just dedicated to security, and it's not just access lists, right? You got to know things like common threats and vulnerabilities, password policies, IPsec, dynamic ARP inspection, AAA, port security, wireless security controls, right? That's a lot more security that you have to know today than you used to have to know to pass a CCNA. The most I seen on a CCNA was just, again, as was access lists. And even like if you look at Cisco's newest entry level cert, right, that CCST, they're even requiring candidates know vulnerabilities, firewalls, CIA, AAA, MFA, encryption, wireless security, right? That's a lot of information for an entry level network engineer to know and understand, right? So as you can see, it's not just pure routing and switching anymore. That there's this expectation, not just on the job, but also getting certifications, which should reflect what employers are looking for, is this more understanding of network security. So if you're looking to become a network engineer, security is going to be part of your future, right? And it's very rare now to find roles that are solely focused on routing and switching, right? Especially in enterprise space. If you're in service provider or a hyperscaler, you probably could just be pure routing switching, and you're probably going to know a lot of automation and scripting, right? But enterprise expect to run into security. We had a guest on last week, Mark Colburn. He came on, he's a senior network engineer, and he talked about this thing called requirements bloat. And that's where people are expected to know more and more to perform their roles, right? So if you missed this last week's episode, I suggest you go back and give it a listen, because it's really great. But, that's part of that requirements bloat. It's not so much, hey, we have the network engineer and then the network security engineer. There's almost this blending of the two, and more people are looking to network engineers to handle that security aspect. Like, hey, firewalls, IDS, IPS, network access control, microsegmentation, SASE. They're not looking for a network security engineer for that. They're looking to a network engineer to understand and design that into the network. All right. But, this shift is not new, right? There's this whole emphasis on network security and integrating security into networking and our network design, right? This was recognized years ago, right? That, we saw almost 20 years ago that perimeter security wasn't going to be sufficient. And you heard terms like defense in depth, right, being thrown around. But unfortunately, what this really, when it came to implementation, was layered firewalls with IDS, IPS, right? It wasn't this like truly integrated security controls. It was more, hey, perimeter firewall, then I might have some firewalls into my data center, and I got IDS, IPS, either in front of the firewall or in front of my data center firewalls. But that was about the extent of defense in depth. But that's not the case anymore, right? You're starting to see this shift. Especially when you hear the term zero trust. So this whole wide open network behind the firewall, right? That's no longer acceptable, right? Because what we find is the majority of the traffic is east-west. It's not north-south, right? So the perimeter security or the layered firewall security, that's sufficient for north-south. But for when it comes to east-west, right now, a lot of it's wide open, because once you get behind that firewall, you get on one, you compromise one host to one server, you pretty much got, free range to any other server, right? Because you're behind a firewall, and a bad actor can do whatever he wants once he breached that firewall. So now with zero trust, there's this emphasis on restricting east-west traffic, right? So you start hearing things like least privilege, right? And that's being applied to not only just user-to-system traffic, but system-to-system traffic, right? So, and even when it comes to systems, processes are not being granted root access, right? It's just, whatever least privilege is required for a user or for an application to function, that's all that's being granted now. And then you start hearing things like microsegmentation, right? You start looking at microsegmentation technologies, right? That's going to restrict east-west traffic. So only devices that need to communicate with each other are permitted to communicate with each other. So you'll start seeing this integrated on host as well as on network devices, right? It's this, no longer, is it efficient just to funnel traffic northbound through a firewall, right? I'm trying to secure my east-west. I don't have to keep sending everything north and back south through a firewall, right? So you start seeing technologies like security group tags and other technologies that are just more focused on these east-west security controls, right? So if you're thinking about being a network engineer, if that's your plan, then you're going to need security. So how do you prepare, right? So, as I mentioned, you're going to get some security with your networking certification. So CCNA, CCST, even CCNP, as you keep climbing that, if you're doing a Cisco track, right, you're going to have a blend of security, right? Like I said, CCNA is 15%. So, but I don't think that's enough, right? I think as you're growing as a network engineer, just having some general security concepts isn't going to be enough, right? You're going to, to me, I would take it like I would follow a parallel track, right? I'd be following networking and security. So, like, say I was just starting out, brand new, what certifications I'm going to start with. So, say let's start with Cisco. So, Cisco has the CCST certifications that came out last year. They got one networking and security. I would knock both those out, right? I would be thinking, well, okay, I'll get my basic networking and my basic security foundation, right? So that would be a good starting point. And that way, I have general networking concepts and general security concepts. But then as I climbed, so say, I moved on to Cisco CCNA, I'd also be working on my CompTIA Security Plus, because then, the CCNA is going to give me, stronger foundation on my routing and switching, with some network security concepts. And then Security Plus is going to give me that, that broader security, perspective, foundation, and also being industry recognized as a security certification. Once you reach that CCNP level, right? And I'm not just talking about like you going after the Cisco CCNP. I'm talking like you're a mid-level network engineer. You could be Juniper, Cisco, right? You may not even have that certification. It's just that's the level you're operating at. But once you reach that level, that's when you want to start rounding out your security knowledge, right? If you might want to start focusing on Palo Alto security appliances, looking at their firewalls, their SASE, right? Their Prisma solution. It could be Fortinet, it could be Cisco, it could be Juniper, right? You're going to want a strong understanding of those security controls that you're going to encounter in your network designs, right? It could be network access control, right? You probably want to start learning 802.1x and how that integrates with your identity servers and your security appliances, how things communicate with Splunk or some other SIM, right? SASE services, micro-segmentations, and, just any other control you're going to encounter in your network design. You're going to want to start building out that skill set, that security skill set, that security knowledge, right? Because it's not just going to be solely focusing on routing and switching, right? I'd rather start now and keep building on my security just as I'm building on my network security. Unless you're planning to be like highly specialized, right? You're going to work for a service provider or even like a hyperscaler, and you just study routing and switching. But honestly, you're not just going to be studying routing and switching. You're going to be knowing automation, things like Ansible, Terraform, right? So I don't think anybody can just say they study routing and switching or they focus solely on routing and switching. You're going to have to round out that skill set. And if you're working in the enterprise space, you're going to encounter security. So best to start learning it now. And just, and if you're just starting from the beginning, start from the beginning, right? So to answer that question, right, people ask you, well, is the network security engineer and the network engineer, are they going to become one? And I don't think so. Not in the near future anyway. There's still a role for both. But if you're a network engineer, you will have to know some level of security. You become what's called a security conscious network engineer. And what that is you know those security controls that you're going to encounter in a modern network design. You're going to integrate them into your design. So you have to know them. Knowing routing and switching is just not going to be enough anymore. So like me personally, when a customer brings me in for a network design, there's an expectation that I can speak to security, right? They expect me to know things like SASE, microsegmentation, network access control, right? They're looking to me. I can't punt that to a network security engineer. They're looking to me as the architect to understand these components as well as I understand the routing and switching components or any other technology that I'm bringing into the design. It's all part of it. So, if you're going to become a network engineer, start learning security. That's what I believe. Now, of course, some people might differ. They might think something, hey, you know what? I don't think security is a bigger role in network engineering. I love to hear it. Love hearing contrasting thoughts on this. Even if you wanted to come on and talk about it, I would love it. But I hope everybody found this useful. If you did, please, write a review in the show notes. Let us know if you're finding this information useful or if there's other information you want to hear or want us to talk about. Love to hear from you. But until next time, have a great week. Do you want to be part of an online community of like-minded people? Join us at cyberjobhacks.com, where you'll receive the latest industry news, cybersecurity career trends, invitation to free events, and exclusive offers. So join our private Facebook group at cyberjobhacks.com.